We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Welcome to the Supernatural Podcast Hour.
We go into the main topic?
Yes. So, our main topic today is Yule, and Merlin is an expert on Yule.
I wouldn't say expert, but
Well,
it's one we do practice.
Compared to the rest of us here, you're an expert.
I see. Well, that's not... Okay. All right, well, Yule.
When does Yule start? I realize this podcast is going to be broadcast a little bit after Yule actually goes on, but give us a little bit of the time frames and how Yule works and all that kind of stuff.
It's the winter solstice. So the 21st of December will be Yule. Traditionally is when it starts. A lot of cultures either leave it just the 24 hours and leave it on the solstice. Some cultures do it from the 21st to January 1st. So it's like this whole season. Yeah, traditionally it's on the shortest day of the year because it is signifying, English is hard again, signifying the death of the god and the rebirth of the sun god. And that's kind of why Christmas picked that time frame for the birth of Christ, because the Son of God is born. There's a lot of similarities there, and those a lot of Christian traditions in stuff for Christmas is actually rooted deeply in Yule, which came rooted from Saturnalia from the Romans. So it's down long time.
And see, the interesting thing is I always thought that Yule was just another name for Christmas. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Yule. And so when I really started researching this, I thought, whoa, it's totally different.
It's all pagan.
I know.
It is all pagan. 100% perfect.
But you know what? I don't care, because as long as I get presents, I'm happy.
Right? If you want to celebrate true Christmas, you won't have a tree, you won't have, wreath, you'll have a donkey and fish and flatbread. Because that was what was there when Christ was born. They didn't have Christmas trees, and they didn't have holly berries, and they didn't have any of that stuff.
Right. When I was living in Russia, Christmas was a day you went to church. That was pretty much it. They'd go to church on Easter and Christmas, and for a lot of people, that was enough. Like you said, there wasn't a whole lot of presents. There wasn't, Christmas trees and that. They have a New Year that they celebrate in a similar fashion with Christmas trees and presents and whatnot. But the holiday Christmas itself, it is you go to church, and that's pretty much it.
Interesting.
I need presents, just so you know.
No presents. This is Russian Orthodoxy, of course. But.
Noted.
I'm sounded very, very materialistic, don't I?
I need the gifts.
No, I could be fine without the gifts. Just don't tell Chad that.
So yeah, we celebrate it in our house, but we also celebrate Christmas in our house because we're kind of a mix. We do, at least for us, at least one Yule gift, especially for our daughter, and then we save the rest for actual Christmas. So, there's a lot of different traditions that Christmas took from Yule. Like I said, the Christmas tree, the Yule log, the presents. Yule actually was started out in Germany, believe it or not. The Germans started celebrating Yule, but other cultures like England and stuff like that celebrated something very similar to Yule that they just kind of umbrellaed it all into one thing.
Now, when I was reading, it said the Germanic people started doing this in the 4th century. Is that when you would say it originated? Did it start before that, or is that when it started?
It did start before that. It started Yule around that time. Like I said, before that, it was Saturnalia in Rome, ancient Rome.
So old.
Yeah.
Right, and it seems
it's old.
A lot. Pretty much everything is based on the seasons, right? And this is the winter solstice, the shortest time of the year. And people have been sun worshipping, I guess you could say, for basically since the beginning of time, since religion has been a thing. And so, right, this is marking that rebirth of the sun god. Days are getting longer. That is something that mankind has noted for eons and has celebrated.
It is. And it's actually one of the fire festivals. It's obviously not like Beltane where you're out in the forest and having bonfires. You're more in your home. But you do celebrate with the fire, with the Yule log. The ash is used for many different things, from fertility to protection to, just amulets and charms. So it's one of the fire festivals that are celebrated throughout the year.
I did a little research on the Yule log and some of the preparation. Are there things that you're aware of that you do special for a Yule log, or do you do that with your practices, Marlon?
We want to, we just don't have a fireplace. So once we are in the area where we can do so, yes. It's typically normally just it's an oak log that is supposed to burn for X amount of time, depending on how long you would like to practice that. Some people did it for 12 hours. Some people did it for a lot longer. Some people kept the fire going for a week. So it's subjective. However, it is bad omen if you let the fire go out. The only way to have a good way is if you snuff that fire yourself.
You know who came up with that bad omen? It was a woman.
It's too cold.
When I get cold, I go down and turn the heat up. I'm like, it's freezing in this house. And Chad's like, it's 70 degrees. And I'm like, 70 degrees is cold when it's 28 degrees outside. A woman came up with that.
It's possible.
And especially the one where you don't snuff it for like a week. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
More than likely.
Yeah.
That sun's got to start coming back out.
That's right. It's a way to kind of coax the sun. Is that correct? Or a way of kind of to encourage this lengthening of days? It's light. It's fire, right?
It's warmth. In fire festivals, it's the time for celebration and warm. And you really can't do that when it's 12 degrees outside. I mean, you can. You'll just be cold.
Yeah. Hence the bad omen.
Yeah.
See how it all connects together? This is making sense.
I mean, it was also a bad omen to blow out the Yule candle. You had to actually snuff it out with tongs or your fingers.
Oh, so that's where that
Not
came
blow
from.
it out, huh?
Could you lick your fingers first, or did you have to be tough and just tough it out?
Well, I always lick my fingers.
Because that would hurt otherwise.
It would burn. And then you have to go see Doc.
That's right. And I only lick my fingers after eating chicken.
What about Doritos?
Yeah, maybe. All right, Doritos and Cheetos too.
I saw some interesting stuff about the preparation of the Yule log, and that some people will take different color ribbons, golds and reds and whites, and kind of weave them together and decorate it up, and then put greenery, some evergreens and mistletoe and different things on it. And it didn't sound like it's a set prescribed thing, but it's kind of something that people just want to do, or how they want to do it. That there's not like it has to be done exactly this way. But
correct.
I thought that was interesting. And then a lot of times they'll use that as a centerpiece at their feasts before the actual Yule burning of the log. And I thought that was interesting because I've had, I've known of Yule logs, and I remember when I was little, we had a little Yule log decoration on our table that my mother had, and it was, a small 3-inch diameter log. It was maybe 12 inches long and decorated up. And I do remember that. Yeah, maybe my mom was a witch. I didn't know that.
It's awesome.
I don't think so, but no, the whole idea of a Yule, of celebrating Yule and the Yule. And the other thing that I thought was interesting about it was people would write little notes and put them in and tuck them in among the ribbons of their wishes and the things that they want for the upcoming year, and they put it in, and it's a little bit like we talked about before, the idea of writing down your goals and making them more concrete, but then putting them in the Yule log, and then it's burned as part of the celebration, and that goes up to, with the smoke. And you can probably correct me if I've got that wrong. But
no, that's in witchcraft and stuff, if you write down something on paper or, conjure a spell and then you burn it, you're actually casting it out through the element of fire and air into existence, into being, into the universe. So it projects it out. So
there's evoking and invoking. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Invoking is something you bring in. Evoking is more along the lines of casting it out.
So that would be evoking that out into the ether. I don't know what the word is. Is that correct?
Depends on the intent, because to invoke it is like, okay, this is what I want to summon to me. So you're invoking something to attract to you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, in a sense, they're two different things.
And I thought that was interesting, both, with the Wiccan and witchcraft, and the idea of just writing down your desires, writing down what you want. Raven did a class with your physical training stuff, and you had your, what was it, the wish board or something like that?
Yeah, they had us do it. I think she called it a dream board. We put our dreams on there. The instructor of the class said, the purpose of this, kind of the thought process behind it, is if you can visualize things and make them more concrete, things will actually happen, as opposed to just the thought rattling around in your head.
And isn't that magic?
Attraction. Yeah,
It is.
It's the law of attraction. That's what that is. Like, if you will something enough, normally it will manifest to you.
Right. And everything has come true except for owning a croft in Scotland. That hasn't come about yet, but
Still working on that one.
Yeah,
You got that little
It'll
piece of
come around.
property in Scotland.
Oh,
Rob.
did you buy a 1 foot?
Santa Claus brought me. So technically, Santa Claus brought me a 1 foot square piece of land in Scotland. So y'all have to address me as Lady Raven now.
Lady Raven. Okay.
Yes, that's my name now.
madam.
I kind of prefer Your Highness, but whatever, Madam works.
That works. But no, wishes. A lot of people do wish upon the Yule log. In doing so, they actually have every single person in the family has got to touch it to cast out their wish, whether it be written down or just, like you'd want a birthday cake.
Mhm.
Just
And-
to yourself.
And then I saw or read some information about that they'll go around and, like you say, invoke or do their wishes, not vocally, and I'm trying to remember what this was, but they went like clockwise first, and then they would come back counterclockwise. Is that something in the way that you do that? Or are you aware
No,
of that?
not myself. No,
Okay.
I've not heard of that, but I can't say I'm surprised. Everything is in circles.
Mhm.
Life is a circle. The seasons is a circle. Like to start a spell, you cast a circle, whether it be a day or nocturnal. So circles, it doesn't surprise me.
You just brought up circles. I was reading about different symbols of Yule, the wreath being a big one, which is
Christmas
circular.
wreath?
Yes.
A circle.
Christmas wreath / Yule wreath. And then it was a symbol of, completion in the beginning of another cycle. Kind of a rebirth symbol once again.
Hey, but
Yeah.
Raven bought some square wreaths. We've got some square wreaths downstairs.
I do. They're
I got nothing for you on that. No, circles, guys. Circles.
You broke the matrix.
Sorry. But they look cute.
Anything else you guys are wanting
So-
to inject here?
So when I was doing my research, it talked about the Yule log, and I thought, okay, I've heard about that, heard of Yule, but then I read about things like a Yule goat and a Yule boar, and I just tell you, I've been missing out. What is about the Yule goat?
A goat has horns. A boar has tusks or horns. The horned god typically is celebrated
Fertility?
this time of year as well. Yes, fertility, indicating the Christmas tree was a symbolic of the horned god's erect penis, which is why you put balls on it to decorate, and it rebirths with Mother Earth to bring back the sun god.
So every time
So-
people put Christmas balls on their tree, they can think about a phallic symbol.
Exactly, but people don't realize that. I actually worked with a guy whose family would not let him have a Christmas tree because of the way he wanted to decorate it was less than appropriate.
Or was
Or
it
was it?
appropriate? That's the real
Well,
question
for the
here,
season,
guys.
it was appropriate, but it was not for the family.
Maybe not socially acceptable.
It wouldn't have been in a Disney film.
21
Well,
and
maybe.
Maybe subtly in a Disney film.
Right. I mean, you got that Little Mermaid thing. I mean, yeah, the cover of that movie. Eek.
I know what you're talking about. It was innocent.
So one thing I found interesting is I was reading a lot about this. Yule, like I said, I always thought it was just another word for Christmas, which I have learned that it is not. It's about the same time, but they're different. But Yule is celebrated in heathenry, which sounds bad, but heathenry, I mean, we use the phrase, oh, you're such a heathen, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. And neo-paganism and even Levian Satanists, which we discussed not too long ago, about 6 months ago on our podcast.
I actually listened to that one.
Yeah. And they use it, they don't want to celebrate Christmas, and so they celebrate Yule, which, when I say it's essentially the same thing, it's, they're so intertwined that they're essentially the same thing.
Right. Almost every Christmas symbol is a Yule symbol. I mean, wreaths, Christmas trees,
Well, and
bells, all that stuff.
The colors.
The colors.
The colors, the reds, the silvers, the golds, the
And I love
The greens, yeah.
Yeah, I love looking at and seeing just all the different cultures and how they've got the same symbolisms in there and just how they adapt it to their culture. So, for example, in the Egyptians.
in the Egypts.
In the
Egypts.
Egypts, yeah. See,
multiple.
Merlin, you're not the only one that English is hard. Holy cow! In the Egyptian culture, they would do the return of the sun god Ra and thank him for warming their crops because they were so agriculturally in there. They did a lot of candles. They did bonfires. The Romans would get involved in debauchery. Imagine that, Romans being debaucherous people. But they would, they were into lighting the candles and lighting the oils in their lamps. And just depending on where you are, just seeing all the symbols of light, celebrating the return of the sun, and just seeing how that is in all the different cultures, I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it's very sun-focused. And one of the things that I noticed, too, is I was trying to figure out how elves played into this, because you do hear a lot about elves. One of the things I read was that the spirits that created the sun inhabited the realm of the elves, and by including elves in the Yule celebration, it would help assure the coercion of the sun to return, which I thought was quite interesting. And, we talk about the elf on the shelf, dun dun dun, or Santa's elves. This is how elves got incorporated into this whole Christmas tradition.
That was interesting.
That's actually something I did not know.
Well, now you do.
Thanks, Doc.
No problem.
So what's the guy's Herbie? Is that the elf on
Hermie?
Herbie?
Herbie the elf that wants to be a dentist.
Is it Herbie or Hermie?
Oh my gosh,
pretty sure it's
I forgot
Hermie.
about that movie.
Or Buddy the elf.
What's your favorite color?
But Buddy the elf didn't
Blue.
want to be a dentist, though.
But yeah, so that's where elves got thrown into this whole Christmas tradition, because they believed that the elves could help coerce the sun god to return.
And you guys mentioned briefly about the boar, the Yule boar. Go into that a little bit. I find that fascinating.
I don't know what more to say. I mean, they feasted on the boar, but it was based off the sacrifice. But yeah, really represented the horn god.
To your point, Merlin, this is something that I was reading up on. I have Nordic ancestry, Swedish ancestry, and every year we have a Christmas ham. And I thought that was interesting. I started reading into this, that the boar was sacrificed to the goddess Freya, and then they would eat the boar. And this is how a Christmas ham became incorporated into, one of the foods that we eat around Christmas time. And that's something I just learned this year, and I've been eating Christmas ham for decades.
So jettison that Christmas turkey and get with your ham.
Yeah, screw turkey.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's for Thanksgiving, guys.
That is a turkey Thanksgiving.
And what
ham
about,
is where it's at.
What about prime rib?
Prime rib's baller. I'm going to say let's go with that. Actually, what
has nothing to do with Yule.
It actually kind of does.
You're good.
For kind of the same reason, the sacrifice. There's a song that I was actually listening to called Gloucestershire Wassail. It's a Christmas song. I'm weird and I like Victorian-era Christmas songs. And Gloucestershire Wassail has nothing to do with Christmas, really. It's all about, good tidings and whatnot, and wassailing, which is not really a Christian thing. But they talk about the beef as well, being, making sure that there's beef for the master and beef for themselves. It was a sacrificial offering. Wassailing itself is an interesting practice that I learned a bit about. We like drinking wassail at Christmas time. I don't know.
Your grandmother was kind of the wassail queen.
Wassail queen. And wassailing is a tradition. It goes back. This is where caroling also kind of comes from, is this idea of wassailing. But wassailing in kind of Celtic tradition is they would take mulled cider, right? And they would go and basically bless the trees that they would have a fruitful year. And so they would go and sing songs and go into these groves and bless the trees for a fruitful year, because this was the start of a new year.
And sing, and that's where a lot of the Christmas caroling
and the term
tradition arrived.
Yeah, the term wassail is from the Old English word washail, which means be well. And so
the drink of good health.
There you go.
It's also a Yule drink.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, because it's all the same.
By origin, right? It's a Yule drink.
Pretty much, yeah.
So one of the last things that I found super interesting, I don't know the last thing, but it's the last thing that I wrote down on this particular page of my notes, says that in Wicca and paganism, the Celtic legend was that, with the dark and the light, there was a battle between the Oak King and the Holly King. And Oak represents the light of the new year, and he tries to usurp the old Holly King, who symbolizes the darkness. And there's some Wiccan rituals that will actually reenact this battle as part of their Yule festivities.
Mm-hmm.
And, holly is used a lot in Christmas. The holly berries, and there's a song. I won't sing the song for you, but holly berries and mistletoe. You're welcome. I don't sing. As you've heard a few times, I've tried little bits, and it goes very poorly. But just even holly is very much a Yule tradition that has been brought into and entwined with Christmas.
So I've talked with Doc a little bit, and Raven has, about light and dark. And Merlin, you've probably got some thoughts on this too. But the idea of darkness and light, and that darkness is not necessarily evil.
No,
and
darkness is not.
Can you guys go into that a little bit? Because I find that very interesting, and I think that ties in directly with what's happening with Yule and this time of the year.
Yeah, Doc, you want to start? You want me to?
Well, dark is dark and light is light, and really it's how they're applied, I think, that has significance. It comes back to that idea of intention, right?
Yes.
And in some ways, they're intimate lovers. You don't have dark without light, and you don't have light without dark. They need each other. They're dependent on each other. And as we go through these cycles, at certain points in time, one will have more power than the other. That's what this whole seasonal cycle is about, is that the dark rules for a period of time, then the light rules for a period of time, and it's at these points where things are in balance or transitioning that we tend to celebrate.
Right. I have to send out little inspirational texts to certain people for different reasons during the week. And there was one that I found recently that said, sometimes you feel like you're in a dark place, and that's not necessarily bad. The way the memes read was, maybe your dark place means you've just been planted and you just need to grow. So that's one example, because I can hear people right now going, how is darkness not bad? It's not necessarily bad.
One of the things that we were talking about as well is people generally, not people, but from an archetypal symbol standpoint, masculine energies are generally attributed to spiritual things, and feminine energies are attributed to physical things. This is why we use terms like Heavenly Father or Mother Earth. And all things are born in darkness. This was the whole point of even, Yule, is that the rebirth of the sun god happens at the darkest point of the year. The universe was created in darkness. We're born in the womb. Plants come from seeds. Birds come from eggs. They all come from places of darkness. Dark is not evil. Dark is where creation begins. This is a matrix for creation to happen.
Yeah, and I think in the popular, culture, and a lot of people make an assumption that just because something is dark, it's evil. And I think that's something that people need to realize is not necessarily true. The dark is not evil. Right. Evil's evil.
Right.
And you can have someone that seems bright and charismatic and light and happy and be the most wicked entity there is.
True.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So evil is evil. Dark is not evil.
Yeah, dark is dark, light is light. It's how it is implied. It's the intent that makes the difference.
It's very true. I don't balance, like you said earlier. That's the key. I'm one who loves to embrace the darkness. Like, even just not necessarily like on an evil broad sport, but like the dark and night. Oh my gosh, it's the best. I love the night. The energy is different. It's more powerful for spells. Like, embrace the dark. It's not a bad thing. It's great. If you just clear your mind and just open up, you'll feel the difference.
See, I'm there with you. I think my favorite part of the day is just the evening when the sun starts to go down. It's quieter. It seems calmer to me. Everything seems more relaxed.
Right. The dark is the resting place.
And I don't consider myself evil. I'm not perfect. But and Merlin, I've known you for quite some time, and I would never in a million years consider you an evil person.
Oh, I'm pure evil. Ask my wife.
Merlin, you mentioned balance. One of the other symbols of Yule is mistletoe. One of the most intriguing
Mistletoe.
things about mistletoe that I found out is that it's a parasitic plant, right? It grows on something. It doesn't sprout from the ground. And
It's greatly poisonous too.
and it is very poisonous. But the thing about mistletoe is because it grows on trees, it's a parasitic plant, it doesn't come from the earth. It is suspended between heaven and earth. It's suspended between two worlds. And that's where they gave mistletoe magical properties. They attributed magical properties to mistletoe. And this is about that union of, you can call it the divine masculine, the divine feminine, or heaven and earth, or the light and the dark. And it's where those two things come together. It ends up becoming a symbol, once again, of union and growth and creation and fertility.
And it can kill you.
And it can kill you. And this is why the tradition of
kill you.
kissing under the mistletoe became a thing. And it can kill you.
And actually, when mistletoe was harvested, especially from an oak tree, they used a gold sickle. It was a golden sickle that used to harvest it. And funny thing is a lot of Christians, religions, banned mistletoe for any church decor, and there's a lot of them that still follow that ban.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, because maybe it's too, maybe these sexual energies of mistletoe are just way too potent.
People are kissing too much
It's
in the church.
way too potent.
Yeah, I heard also that they would use the gold sickle or scythe to cut down the mistletoe, and if it happened to fall to the ground, all of its energy would be absorbed into the earth and it would lose its potency. So
It would deplete. And yeah, and you could only harvest it on the 6th day of the moon.
I did not know that.
So 6th day of the moon, is that the 6th day after a full moon, 6 days before? How does that work?
So the new moon is the beginning. So
Okay.
6 days after your new moon is when you harvest your mistletoe. And for all you hunters out there, if you carry a branch of mistletoe while hunting, it will bring good fortune, good luck, and attract animals to you for a better harvest.
Ooh, that's good to know. I don't hunt, but
Well, I
have
do.
I have hunting friends.
I'm trying to get Doc to hunt, but he just won't do it. It's like he's busy.
Dude, I went out on a deer hunt this year.
But did you go with Merlin?
I did not go with Merlin.
Okay, see, it doesn't count. Then.
I went with my
Authentic.
wife. She was the one with the tag.
Did she
Okay.
get one?
No, unfortunately.
See, it's because you didn't go with
You
Merlin
didn't-
and have
and you didn't have
mistletoe.
I
mistletoe.
should have had
You
some
didn't have
damn
mistletoe.
mistletoe in my pocket. Probably would have helped.
There you go.
See, and
Couldn't
then you
have
went
hurt.
with your wife. You could have smooched under it.
That's right. Yeah, but I would have had an excuse to kiss. There you go.
No, I found
There you
Yule very interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was
There's
a really
lot of
interesting
stuff
topic.
I did not know about it.
And I looked at it, it's like, well, this is Christmas. And it's like, no, Christmas is Yule. I think
Christmas is Yule.
is a better description of that.
Right.
Absolutely.
It was this whole idea of, hey, we have this, ancient festival where we celebrate the birth of the sun god, and Christians were like, yeah, the son of
We'll celebrate the
God.
Son of God.
That's right.
So-
Same thing, right? Light of the world, let's go with it.
So Merlin can correct me if I'm wrong, because you know that everything you find online is absolutely correct.
Google is fact.
Yeah. So yeah, Google. According to online, in Norway, King Hakon, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Hakon, who ruled from 934 to 961, is the guy who's kind of credited with rescheduling Yule to have it coincide with the Christian Christmas. Some of the things that he came up were sacrifices being made at the temple, bringing food and ale for a feast, and I kind of get the impression that sacrificing animals may have come a little earlier, but he brought that in. Vessels that would hold blood and animals and twigs, and they would use it to spread over the walls, which sounds like something biblical to me. Altars of the temple that they had, and even the men present, and they had toasts that were meant to be drunk.
I actually do not know, so I would have to look into that.
Yeah, so that's one of the little tidbits I unearthed. Like I said, whether or not it's a thing is debatable, but it sounds cool.
Well, I am very grateful for Yule because I really like Christmas.
I do too.
It is Mallory's most favorite time of the year.
Sweet.
Strong work, Yule.
Halloween's probably my most favorite time of the year. Is
Yeah,
that
Samhain's mine, and that's her second.
Christmas/Yule is a very, 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 very close second.
Along the whole kind of celebration, we've got a close friend who's Jewish, and her favorite holiday is actually Christmas. And they're not celebrating necessarily the birth of the Son of God and Jesus as a Redeemer, but they love the festival, and they
Yep.
relish in the.
They like the feasts and the gift giving and the feeling of, peace on earth, goodwill towards men.
And I thought that was kind of interesting as I watched some YouTube videos where they talked about some of the Wiccan and witches and the celebrations that they do. And they were saying, go out and celebrate with the community and even the Christian community. Go out and do those things. Enjoy the Christmas festivals and the lights and the things, because it's a big part from what they were describing of their culture, of the Wiccan community, to be very community minded and be very involved.
It's funny you brought up Judaism. Hanukkah started on December 10th. I am not Jewish, but my kids like to play dreidel, and we make latkes and talk about the menorah.
Is it made out of clay?
These ones are made out of wood, but
Ale.
they spin better that way. But we try to incorporate some of these Hanukkah traditions as well. But Hanukkah is also the festival of light. I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, obviously, it's the Maccabees taking back the temple and being able to dedicate it by burning their oil for a period of time, 8 days total. But it's a celebration of light. In fact, that was the holiday in which Christ made the statement, "I am the light of the world," and it has a lot more significance when you understand context. But it all ties back to light. This is Christianity, Judaism, paganism. This time of year,
the rebirth of the light.
Yeah, it is all about the light. It's about the light coming back from basically the dead, being reborn, right?
Interesting stuff, and I think the idea of being able to understand other people's cultures and celebrations. I've joked, Chinese New Year's. Yes, let's go.
Hell yeah!
Let's go get some dinner.
Sweet Chinese food, right? Well, and that's exactly it. My kids were like, "Dude, are we doing latkes? Are we playing dreidel?" And I'm like, "Sure, let's do it." My kids actually came to remind me that it was Hanukkah.
Cinco de Mayo. We
Exactly.
need to go get tacos.
Tacos, baby. It's all right to embrace other people's
and other cultures.
It's okay to celebrate with others, and
With respect.
With respect. Don't appropriate, because that would be bad, I guess. But
That
celebrate.
would be bad.
You can't
So
appropriate, but you can celebrate. Celebrate, guys.
Yes, because culture. I love other cultures. It's so fascinating to learn other people's traditions.
Although I think Christmas may have appropriated Yule.
Yes, that's where my vote goes to.
And I'm okay with it.
Me too.
But it's something, to me, Yule is something that, and again, Merlin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are cultures that still celebrate that. But it's interesting because it's such an old, ancient ritual and celebration. Just to have it incorporated in Christmas, it's like it hasn't died. It might not be in its pure form, but it's still around. And everybody is celebrating it in some forms, whether they realize it or not.
Well, believe it or not, almost every holiday that we celebrate is traditionally based off of paganism. I mean, Groundhog's Day is even a pagan celebration.
Right. The problem is that these pagans were the worst record keepers in the history of mankind. And so even though we have all these celebrations, we still know very little about how they went about celebrating.
Right?
So we just make up our own stuff.
Well, and the problem is a lot of them didn't keep record because they were executed. They were killed for witchcraft or burned at the stake, because during that time frame, the hammer of the witches, or the bane of the witches, was allowed, and bounty hunters were allowed to just go kill and get a bounty on a witch. And so a lot of the tales, believe it or not, was written in cookbooks, written in journals, some in a secret language that only they could decipher. It was like a hidden message right in plain sight. And so the texts are there. We just don't know where to find them.
And a lot of it was in oral tradition as well, right? Because they didn't want to be persecuted for having written statements about the way that they
persecuted and killed.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was very well hidden.
Well, and the sad thing is a large part of why they were persecuted and killed is because back then, if you didn't understand something, it was scary, and you just would get rid of it, rather than try to understand it or sit down. Hey, let's talk. Tell us about why you think these things. So I think that's sad.
Yeah, and a lot of it was driven by the church. Like, the kings were like, "Oh no, you will convert or you will die."
Yep.
"Oh, you're a pagan, you're a heathen, you will die." And so a lot of it went into shroud and secrecy and in the night, and that's where really going into the night in the shadows came about because couldn't do it during the day.
Yeah.
The safe place.
The dark is safe, people.
Well, this has been a great topic, and I've really enjoyed it. I think I've learned a lot from studying that.
Go get your swag. So I hope you have a Merry Christmas / Happy Yule. Is it Happy Yule or Merry Yule or Joyous Yule?
Either or. So you can say Merry Yule, you can say Happy Yule. I say Happy Yule, but
Merry Christmas and Happy Yule.
Happy Yule.
All right. Hey, we'll talk to you soon.
Stay spooky, my haunty friends.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright by Advanced Paranormal Services.